When I was 13, I accepted Christ at that little Church of the Brethren down at the corner of 209 and 220. And a year later, Dan Richardson opened this station. So I was only like 14 when I started listening, and I've been listening for 50 years, all these 50 years. And next to my Bible, this station has been the greatest blessing in my life, because it's, you know, helped me to grow in the Lord, whether I'm in the kitchen, you know, doing dishes, cooking meals, running errands up and down the road. Even sometimes when I'm in the yard, I take my portable radio, because I can't stand hardly to miss, you know, the wonderful teaching on Way Radio. And in Psalm 119, I think it's verse 6, David said, "Thy word have I hid in my heart, that I might not sin against thee." And it's only by knowing the truth of God that we can refute error. Well, I know J. Vernon McGee has always been one of my very favorites, because he's so down to earth, and he's, you know, he's a good Bible teacher. I'm so grateful for the true sound Bible teaching that's, you know, been carried out for 50 years. And I just encourage all my friends and family to listen, encourage their friends and family, so that they can all grow in the grace and knowledge of the Lord through hearing the sound Bible teaching that's on Way Radio.
Well, I had talked with my fiance's father, who said, "Look, I just want you to listen to this radio station for a week. Just promise me to listen from 7 o'clock in the morning until 9 o'clock, I believe was the time they had told me." So I set it on my alarm clock, and I said, okay. For that week, it was like, oh, they got some nice positive stuff, but, you know, there's nothing there. But, see, God knew it wasn't for that week He was talking about. It was actually going to be the week after that Way Radio was going to play a major part in my accepting of Christ. So here I had lost the woman that I loved and her son, and all of a sudden I'm getting papers telling me I'm going to lose the house that I had dreamed to have, and I just couldn't take it anymore. I went to my knees that night and grabbed a .45. I used to shoot competition, so I had a .45 pistol with me, and I used to carry it all the time. I used to carry a concealed weapon, so military man in me, so I always had that with me. Well, I was going to put it to good use that night, and I can remember hitting my knees, and I had cocked my pistol and had gotten ready to squeeze my trigger, and I'm crying out to God, as I knew Him, that if He was real, He needed to show me that He was real, because I was ready to pull the trigger. And now keep in mind, I'm living in Middleburg, and my nearest neighbor is probably, 2.5 to 3 acres away. So if I would have fired that shot, nobody would have heard it. And even if they did, there's so many, single gunshots going around out in the country that nobody really would have minded. But in my head, I get this thought to go turn the radio on and turn it up loud so no one can hear this bullet go off. Yeah, that was bright thinking. But what it was God wanted me to go and turn. And I still get goosebumps and chills from this, because Bill Pierce was on that night, and he had the show Night Sounds. And I went and I turned that radio on, and I'll be darned if he was not talking about not committing suicide. Well, the bullheaded person that I was like, okay, that's, coincidence. So I went back to, please excuse me, I went back to my knees, and I'm like, okay, that's good, but that's not good enough. And I went to go put the gun back to my head and squeeze the trigger, and I remember Bill saying something that my mother had told me. And the minute he said that, I knew that God was in that room and that He was real. My mother used to always tell me, don't give up before the miracle happens. And as soon as Bill said that, I knew God was there and He was real. And I dropped the gun and I said, God, now how can I pull the trigger knowing that You're here? And I didn't want to live, because my life was, in my opinion, was in ruins and there was no fixing it. So I got this other bright idea. What I would do is I would throw my gun against the wall, and if I threw it just right, it would go off, it would kill me, and I would not get in trouble by God, who I knew was in that room, because the gun went off on its own. And I'm here to tell you, I probably could not have thrown that gun any better, because it was a perfect shot. It hit that wall backwards, the barrel. I mean, I looked right down that barrel when I threw that wall up against it, and it put a hole in the wall perfectly to ignite everything. And the gun just fell to the floor. And I was like, man, God, I can't even do this right. So I did not receive Christ that night, but the next morning I was led to a lawyer, because I was going to go file bankruptcy and all of this. And I went to this lawyer, and I'm sorry I cannot remember his name, but was kind of in a fog through all that time. And he had asked me a question about whether I'd been to church or anything. And he said, well, maybe what you're looking for might be in a church. I said, well, could you give me a few names of some churches? And he did. He wrote down a few, and there was one that stuck out, and it was Trinity Baptist. And so I thought, okay, I'm going to go there. So I went there the next Sunday. And of course, I'm going to this church, and I'm thinking to myself, I am going to get my girlfriend back. I'm going to get my house back. I'm going to get all this. I'm not thinking about Jesus, because I was still not, you know, sold on that Jesus. I knew God was real, and I was going to go there and get all this back. When I was in this church, I had never really heard when they call you forward, I had never really heard anybody ask anybody to come forward for salvation or anything like that. And the preacher was doing the call, and I'm here to tell you, the only thing I heard that man say was, does anybody need prayer? That's the only thing I heard him say, because if I would have heard him say, does anybody need to receive Jesus, I wouldn't have raised my hand, because I still hadn't believed in Jesus. I just believed in God. And I'm sitting here with my head down, and I hear this preacher say, does anybody need prayer? And of course I raise my hand. And immediately as I raise my hand, this man sits down right beside me. It was almost like he was sitting there waiting, like there was a sign on me that said he's going to raise his hand. And as soon as I raised that hand, the guy sat down and he says, so you want to give your life to Christ? And I said, what? Because that's not what I heard that guy said. And he goes, well, you just raised your hand to receive Jesus. And I'm like, okay, how am I going to, I'm thinking to myself, how am I going to get out of this? So I thought, well, if I ask him when, what's going to end up happening is he'll say, oh, tonight or tomorrow or next week, and then I'll just know I won't come back. And so I said, okay, well, when? And he looked at me and he said, right here, right now. And as soon as that man said that to me, this light went on. And I looked at him and I said, excuse me. I said, that's what I'm here for. So I went and I got baptized, and I can remember being really disappointed when I came out of the water, because I didn't hear any angels singing or harps playing, and I was like driving home. And see, keep in mind, I had a relationship with God, so I talked to him regularly, but I didn't know Jesus until that day. And as I'm driving, I'm like, you know, God, okay, Jesus, nothing happened. I don't feel any different. But as I went home, I started getting this hunger for His Word, and I can remember God giving me this time to just start reading His Word. And man, but I had this Bible that was given to me in 1982, and I still have it to this day, and it is riddled with the things that God started giving me a hunger for. And from there on, I can remember about a week went by, and I'm thinking to myself, you know, it's been a week and I haven't cussed. And I was very bad. Military man, bad guy in the bar, all that stuff. And I'm thinking to myself, you know, that wasn't what I was asking for. I was asking God to bring me all this stuff back. But I found since then that God doesn't clean us the way that we want Him to clean. He wants to clean us the way He wants to clean and when He wants to clean. And so as a result of that, my life has changed as a gift from Way Radio that I never would have expected in 100 years. I still now to this day, I listen to Way Radio. I have it programmed on my car. I love Chuck Swindoll, Tony Evans we were talking about, and a multitude. I'm grateful for Way Radio giving me an opportunity, and Luke for asking me to come here and share a life-changing night in my life. Now, I didn't accept Christ that night that I put that gun to my head, but I'll tell you this, that was the night that I got saved. And God just sent me down to finalize it. Thank you so much for your time and your blessings, Way Radio.